This is Carolina Ghost Towns, a podcast about the vanished towns and lost communities in South Carolina, North Carolina, and maybe a few other places. I'm your host, Tom Taylor.
Next item of business on the agenda are the approval of minutes from January 16.
Make a motion that we approve the minutes.
All those in favor of approval of the minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, and the ayes have it. We don't have any proclamations or special recognition except for one. We'd like to welcome wish our colleague a happy birthday. Happy birthday, Ms. Seaman.
Thank you.
Appearances, current agenda items. Do we have anybody that signed up to speak? Okay. Next item on the agenda, public hearings. And I'll call on Councilor Chairman Kervin.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We have one public hearing tonight. Anderson-Greenville Joint County Industrial Business Park 2010 Park Agreement Amendment Project Austin. This public hearing is being held for the purpose of receiving comments from the public regarding an ordinance to amend an agreement for the deliverance of a of a joint county industrial and business park 2010 park of Anderson and Greenville counties so as to enlarge the park and add certain property in Anderson County known as Project Austin.
These are the sounds of a Greenville County Council meeting from February 2024. All over the country, you can hear something similar in committee rooms, boardrooms, and council chambers.
I'd like to call to order this April 15th, 2024 regular Board of Education meeting. At this moment, will you please rise with me as
board can discuss which member would like to volunteer to serve on the high school scholarship committee. The committee typically meets once in April for about an hour and 15 minutes to determine which students will receive the available scholarships. This meeting is tomorrow at 1:30. Is there anyone who...
So for instance, at that meeting, we would incorporate the change of clarifying item 8, the JLARC study, as an info item for November 2024.
And also for us to be able to...
As a school district administrator, I've had to attend my fair share of school board meetings. I've also had to serve on several boards that were subject to public review. These meetings follow strict procedures so that the meetings don't get out of hand, especially those where a public audience is present. You might not know it, but these parliamentary procedures were developed by a man born right here in South Carolina, in a town named for his family. Though famous for developing Robert's Rules of Order, Henry Martyn Robert was not highly regarded by either his native state or the town of his birth because of his views during the American Civil War. Today we take a look at the town of Robertville, located in the lower part of South Carolina. Robertville is still an active community, which I'd rank as about a C4 on the Liegstadt scale of ghost towns. The community grew up around a church. It was, or is, an informal community, non-platted, which surrounded a central location, specifically the church in question. In the last season, we talked about the Salzburger settlement of Ebenezer on the Savannah River. The Salzburgers had been evicted from what is now Austria as part of the Counter-Reformation. Another group that suffered the same fate were the Huguenots from France and Switzerland. After the Edict of Nantes, many Huguenots sought refuge in the New World. One of these was the Reverend Pierre Robert. He was born in Saint-Imier, Switzerland in 1656. According to his listing on the Find a Grave website, quote,
Reverend Pierre Robert came to Charleston, South Carolina in 1686 on the heels of the Revocation of Nantes. He became the founder and the first rector of the French congregation at the French Santee Colony in St. James Parish, South Carolina. Reverend Pierre Robert served as head minister of the Huguenot Church at French Santee until 1715, when he resigned due to infirmities of age.
Close quote. Reverend Robert died that same year, 1715. Many of Robert's descendants joined a group of Welsh Baptists and settled near the Savannah River in the Black Swamp region. Pierre Robert's great-grandson, John Robert, was born in the St. James Parish at Jamestown, but moved to the Black Swamp area sometime prior to 1770. Fast forward a few decades. In 1781, Reverend Alexander Scott organized the Black Swamp Baptist Church in what is now Jasper County. By this time, members of the Robert family had joined the Baptist faith, many serving as ordained ministers. Black Swamp Baptist became a religious center for the area. It played host to the South Carolina Baptist Convention several times and was often referred to as the, quote, mother of churches, close quote, for the region. The Roberts and Lawtons were the dominant families in the Black Swamp region and held large tracts of farmland. By 1825, the area around Black Swamp became known as Robertville. To the north was the town of Lawtonville, which eventually became the modern town of Estill. Both families were well educated, attending the Robertville Academy, then going on to become doctors, ministers, and military officers. Alexander Lawton served as a colonel in the War of 1812. His son, Alexander Robert Lawton, founded the American Bar Association and served as the quartermaster of the Confederate Army as a brigadier general. Despite its prominent citizens, Robertville never incorporated as a town, but remained a small farming community. In 1843, William Gilmore Simms described Robertville this way.
Robertville is a village pleasantly situated on a rising ground, about 5 miles from the Savannah River and 23 miles below the Barnwell line. It is a thriving village with a church, post office, academy, a public library, and carries on a brisk trade with the neighboring country.
Now we come to one of the most famous residents of Robertville, Henry Martyn Robert. Henry was a nephew of Alexander Robert Lawton, but he had completely different loyalties. We'll get to that part in a bit. While Henry is probably the most famous, he certainly wasn't the only accomplished member of his family. Henry was the son of Dr. Joseph T. Robert. Dr. Robert was trained as a physician, but left his medical practice to go into ministry. A 1985 article in the state newspaper about the life of Henry Robert describes Dr. Robert's training.
Robert's father had given up a successful medical practice in the Robertville area to enter the Baptist ministry. Dr. Robert's extensive education included a degree from Brown University, 2 years of graduate study at Yale, and a medical degree from Charleston Medical College. Already perhaps one of the best educated ministers in the denomination, Dr. Robert, nevertheless, buckled down to study for a degree in theology from Furman Theological Seminary.
Dr. Robert was ordained as a pastor of his home church at Black Swamp. As a minister, Dr. Robert was assigned to various churches around the country, including churches in northern states. During the family's sojourn in the North, Dr. Robert took the side of the abolitionist movement. He briefly returned south to pastor the First Baptist Church of Savannah for a while, but returned to the North to educate his children. He taught at Burlington University in Iowa and later became its president. As for young Henry, he entered West Point at the age of 16 and graduated 4 years later with honors. Robert was assigned to the Corps of Engineers. Henry Robert came down with malaria while traveling through the Panama Canal and was assigned as a defense engineer in Washington. During the Civil War, Lieutenant Henry Robert served with the Union Army, while his uncle, General Alexander Lawton, also a West Point graduate, served the Confederate Army. Robert eventually came to the Pacific Northwest to work on coastal defenses. He was meeting with citizens in a local church when the meeting became unruly and disorganized. Robert stated that, quote, "My embarrassment was supreme," close quote, and he vowed never to preside over a meeting without knowing how to do it. Robert studied Thomas Jefferson's rules for Congress, but found them somewhat complicated. He studied several other sources, but eventually wrote his own set of rules, completing the first version of what would become known as Robert's Rules of Order in 1869. Henry Martyn Robert attained the rank of Brigadier General, but became persona non grata in the community that bore his name. His anti-slavery views and service in the Union Army were completely counter to sentiments back in South Carolina. Robert retired from the Army in 1901 and died in Oswego, New York in 1923 and was buried in Arlington Cemetery. Robert's father, Dr. Joseph T. Robert, returned to the South and became the first president of what would become Morehouse College, fulfilling his desire to see that institutions were created to provide better education for formerly enslaved people. But back to Robertville. Robert's uncle, General Alexander Lawton, incurred the wrath of the Union forces because of his high position in the Confederate Army. The communities of Robertville and Lawtonville were completely burned by Sherman's forces during his march to the sea. According to one contemporary report, quote,
Sherman's hordes destroyed everything in Robertville, including the noted churches. It is said that nothing was left standing in the village but a brick well curb. In the same manner, the surrounding plantation homes succumbed to the blast of a total war, including Black Swamp Baptist Church.
Yet, the congregation survived. Ascension Episcopal Church of Gillisonville was built between 1847 and 1848. In 1867, the building was purchased by members of the Black Swamp Baptist, who moved it to its present site in 1871. It was renamed Robertville Baptist Church in 1934 in recognition of the Robert family. Today, Robertville is merely a wide spot on Highway 321 in Hampton County. Robertville Baptist Church and its historic cemetery still stand, and the church is on the National Register of Historic Places. The area is still very much a farming community. An 1875 Bradstreet and Company report listed only 2 stores in Robertville. In 1920, that same report showed that there was only 1 store. Now, there's only a small convenience store and gas station at the intersection of Robertville Road and Highway 321. Robertville's legacy endures, though, through the American Bar Association, founded by a Confederate general, and a little book written by a Union general, Henry Martyn Robert, that bears his name and still governs so many formal meetings across the United States. That's it for this episode. I'll provide more links to the history of Robertville and its residents in the show notes. Thanks for listening.
In this southern ghost town, we found a story untold. In the shadows of the past, we unravel, secrets unfold. With each step we take, we journey back in time. In this southern ghost town, we leave our footprints behind.
Thanks for listening. The opening music was composed by Lex FM with additional music from Pixabay. The song Southern Ghost Town was generated by Suno AI. All other music was composed and recorded by me, Tom Taylor. Carolina Ghost Towns is a part of the Random Connections empire. It's pretty much a one-man show, so I wear all the hats, including producer, writer, researcher, sound engineer, publicist, and bartender. If you like the show, please subscribe on your favorite pod venue and be sure to give us feedback. If you have questions, comments, or ideas for the show, you can reach me at carolinaghosttownspod@gmail.com. For more information and show notes, visit randomconnections.com. Thank you.
In this southern ghost town, we found a story untold. In the shadows of the past, we unravel, secrets unfold. With each step we take, we journey back in time. In this southern ghost town, we leave our footprints behind.